spanning from about 299 to 250 million years ago. The Permian period marked the final chapter of the Paleozoic era. During this time, Earth's west supercontinent Pangaea stretched across the globe, creating a hot and arid climate. At the dawn of the Permian, animal life was sparse, with only a few species and genera. But as temperatures soared, these species diversified, giving rise to fascinating new forms of life. Before the Permian, life had thrived during the Carboniferous period, when vast swamps created the coal deposits we mine today. The transition to the Permian, however, marked the beginning of something new, an era where ancient amphibians, reptiles, and early synapsids, the ancestors of mammals, vied for survival in a world that was slowly but surely becoming more hostile. By the end of this period, life on Earth would face its greatest challenge yet. The Great Dying, the most catastrophic extinction event our planet has ever known. But before that, the Permian was an age of resilience, adaptation, and transformation. In this video, we'll explore the incredible creatures that dominated our planet long before the age of dinosaurs. One of them that stands out for its sheer size and terrifying presence. Prionosuchus, the largest amphibian to have ever lived, a creature that resembled a modern crocodile, only much more massive, lurking in Asian swamps, dominating its environment. We'll meet this prehistoric giant later in the video, while exploring some other fascinating life forms that thrived long before the dinosaurs. Deep beneath the parched surface of the Permian deserts, small creatures found refuge. Meet Diictodon, the creature that might not look intimidating, but in the dry, arid landscape of the Permian, this little burrower was a master of survival. About the size of a small dog, Diictodon wasn't a mighty predator or a towering herbivore, but what it lacked in size, it made up for its ingenuity. This animal was among the first to truly master the art of burrowing, a strategy that offered shelter from the blistering heat of the day and the freezing nights. On the surface, conditions were brutal. In the desert-like interior of Pangaea, temperatures could swing drastically from over 40 degrees centigrade during the day to near freezing at night. For creatures like Diictodon, the surface was a dangerous place, especially for small herbivores who were vulnerable to predators like Dimetrodon and Inostrancevia. But inside its burrow, Diictodon had a different world, safe, cool, and hidden. Burrowing provided protection not only from the elements but also from predators. It's like that Diictodon dug intricate tunnel systems where entire families could live, raise their young, and store food. Look at those tusks, not for fighting, but for digging. Diictodon was a skilled excavator, using its powerful forelimbs to dig through the tough, dry soil. These tunnels were not just homes, they were fortresses. When danger loomed, Diictodon could quickly retreat underground, pulling loose dirt behind it to block the entrance and hide from its enemies. Many predators of the Permian period likely passed over these burrows, unaware of the safety that lay just beneath their feet. Despite their small size, Diictodon were incredibly successful. Fossils suggest they were widespread across Pangaea, living in large numbers and spanning vast areas in a world of giants. It was the small, often overlooked creatures like Diictodon that quietly thrived, their humble burrows weaving through the fabric of Permian life. Like modern animals, Diictodon likely had strong family bonds. In their underground homes, they raised their young, teaching them to dig, to forage, and to survive. Life underground wasn't just about hiding, it was about thriving. In the face of overwhelming odds, Diictodon carved out a life in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Their simple, unassuming existence reminds us that survival isn't always about strength or size. Sometimes it's about knowing when to retreat, when to adapt, and when to dig deep. Diictodon may not have been the largest or most fearsome of the Permian creatures, but it was a testament to resilience, an animal that thrived through its resourcefulness and tenacity, and in a world growing ever more dangerous, these qualities would prove to be more valuable than sheer might. The Permian period wasn't just a time of parched deserts and dry plains. Hidden away from the relentless sun, life flourished in the rivers and shallow seas. Here, ancient waters teemed with life, offering refuge from the harsh conditions above. And in these waters swamped one of the earliest known aquatic reptiles, Mesosaurus. Mesosaurus was small, about a meter long, but it was perfectly adapted to life in water. Its pattern-like limbs and long flat tail propelled it smoothly through the shallows. This early reptile marks a pivotal point in the evolution of life on Earth, a creature that left lands behind to master the water. Feeding on small fish and other aquatic creatures, Mesosaurus had sharp needle-like teeth that lined its elongated jaws. These were perfectly suited to grasp slippery prey in the warm, freshwater environments where it thrived. These rivers and lakes were lifelines for the animals of the Permian. Their temperatures were most stable, and the threat of predators was less overwhelming for Mesosaurus. This watery world was both its home and its sanctuary. But Mesosaurus is more than just an ancient aquatic reptile. It's also a key piece of one of the greatest scientific puzzles in history. Continental drift. The discovery of Mesosaurus fossils on two continents, South America and Africa, raised an important question. How could the same species exist in two places separated by an ocean? This was one of the first clues that led scientists to the groundbreaking theory of continental drift, the idea that the continents were once joined together as Pangea before slowly drifting apart. The fossils of Mesosaurus not only provide a window into the life of the Permian, but they also tell the story of Earth's ever-changing surface. This small aquatic reptile unknowingly would have rewrite our understanding of the planet's geological history. In its time, though, Mesosaurus was just an survivor navigating the complex and interconnected ecosystems of the Permian. It represents a delicate balance between adaptation and evolution. A creature that found its niche in a rapidly changing world. As life on land struggled with droughts and deserts in the waters, Mesosaurus ruled. Its story a quiet testament to the adaptability of life and a reminder that Earth's landscapes were not the only places where evolution was unfolding. Not all creatures of the Permian were built for the desert heat. Some found their homes in the humid-dense swamps where the air was thick with moisture and the waters teemed with strange life forms. Among them was a curious creature with a head unlike anything else on Earth, Diplocaulus. At first glance, Diplocaulus looks almost alien. Its wide, boomerang-shaped head stretching out to either side is one of nature's most puzzling designs, but this peculiar feature wasn't for decoration. It served a purpose in the murky waters of the Permian. Scientists believe that the head shape helped Diplocaulus stay buoyant, almost like a natural hydrofoil, allowing it to swim more efficiently in the slow-moving rivers and swamps it called home. Others speculate that its wide head may have been used to deter predators, making it harder for larger creatures to swallow it whole. Whatever the exact function, this bizarre design gave Diplocaulus an advantage in its environment. In the dense swamps of the Permian, where larger amphibians and predators lurked, adaptation was key, and Diplocaulus was perfectly suited for its watery world. While Diplocaulus spent much of its time in the water, it was also capable of moving on land, though its short, stubby legs made it a clumsy walker with a body built for swimming. Venturing onto land was likely only for sharp bursts, perhaps to escape predators or find new feeding grounds. On land, Diplocaulus Diictodon may have looked a little out of place, its wide head making terrestrial navigation even more of a challenge, but in the water, it was in its element, gliding gracefully through the swamps, perfectly adapted to its semi-aquatic life. The swamps of the Permian were home to a wide array of creatures from giant amphibians to early reptiles. Here, Diplocaulus had to be cautious. Despite its unique adaptations, it wasn't a top predator. Larger amphibians like Eryops lurked nearby and competition for food was fierce. In these wetlands, survival meant blending in, staying swift and outsmarting potential predators. For Diplocaulus, its strange appearance wasn't a burden. It was the key to thriving in a world where every creature had to find its place. Diplocaulus may not be as famous as some of the larger creatures of the Permian, but its story is just as important. The small amphibian reminds us that evolution is not always about size or strength. Sometimes survival depends on the most unusual adaptations, and in a world as unpredictable as the Permian, being different was often the best advantage of all. In the wild lands of the Permian, where the sun baked the earth day by day and the cold gripped the night, one creature ruled the land, a predator both feared and admired. This was Dimetrodon, the unmistakable sail-backed synapsid, an apex predator that shaped the ecosystem of its time, with sharp teeth, muscular limbs, and that massive sail on its back. Dimetrodon was more like than just a hunter. It was the undisputed king of the Permian landscape. It wasn't a dinosaur, as many mistakenly believe, but rather a synapsid, a group of creatures that would eventually give rise to mammals. The sail of Dimetrodon is its most striking feature. Towering fan-like structure made up of elongated vertebrae covered in skin. But what was it for? This has long been a subject of debate. Among paleontologists, many believe that the sail helped regulate body temperature. In the cool morning air, Dimetrodon could use its sail to absorb heat from the sun, warming its blood quickly and giving it a burst of energy for hunting. And in the heat of midday, it might have helped dissipate heat, acting as a natural cooling system. But Dimetrodon wasn't just about appearance, it was a deadly predator, a swift and efficient killer that stalked the vast dry plains of Pangaea. Its teeth were serrated, perfect for slicing through flesh, and its legs, unlike many reptiles, were positioned under its body, giving it the strength and speed to chase down prey. Dimetrodon was likely an ambush predator, using its low profile and keen senses to get close to its prey before launching a deadly attack. In the harsh world of the Permian, survival was brutal, and Dimetrodon was perfectly adapted to dominate the food chain. Dimetrodon was more than just a predator. It was a bridge between the past and the future. As a synapsid, it belonged to a lineage that would eventually evolve into mammals. Its anatomy, particularly its jaw structure and the shape of its teeth, would later be passed down to its distant descendants, influencing the evolution of mammals, including us. Though Dimetrodon walked the earth millions of years before the first true mammals appeared, its legacy can still be seen in the biology of modern animals. In a way, this ancient predator is part of our own evolutionary story. Life in the Permian wasn't easy for Dimetrodon. Every day was a battle for survival, not just against its prey, but against the changing climate and an increasingly hostile environment. But it thrived, reigning from millions of years as the dominant predator in its ecosystem. The sail-backed hunter of the Permian may be long gone, but its memory endures in its strength, adaptability, and sheer presence. Dimetrodon embodies the power of life during the time when the earth itself was evolving towards its next great chapter. While the dry interior of Pangaea was home to creatures like Dimetrodon, the swamps and wetlands of the Permian provided a different stage, one filled with creatures both strange and terrifying. Here, in the murky waters, an amphibious giant lumbered through the shallows. Eryops, a creature whose name means drawn-out phrase, and one of the largest amphibians of its time. Eryops was built for life both in water and on land. With its powerful limbs, it could drag itself out of the water and bask on the shores, but it was most at home in the swamps where it could use its massive jaws to ambush prey lurking beneath the surface. In the water, Eryops was a patient hunter. Its large flat skull housed a wide mouth lined with sharp teeth, perfect for grabbing fish and smaller amphibians, but its most powerful weapon was its bite. Eryops had a strong jaw that could clamp down on prey with devastating force, pulling its victim into the murky depths. In the dark waters, the swamps, Eryops was a force to be reckoned with. Its powerful limbs and crushing bite make it one of the top predators in its ecosystem. Despite its aquatic prowess, Eryops was also well adapted to life on land. Its stout, muscular limbs allowed it to haul its large body out of the water and onto the banks of rivers and lakes. Once on land, it was a slow, lumbering creature, but its sheer size and power meant that few creatures dared to challenge it. Unlike modern amphibians, Eryops was heavily built with a body designed for both land and water, but while it could survive on land, the swamps was its true domain, a place where its size and strength could be put to full use. The swamps of the Permian were bustling ecosystems filled with life of all shapes and sizes. Here, creatures like Eryops shared their watery world with early reptiles, fish, and smaller amphibians. But life in the swamps wasn't easy. Competition for food was fierce, and predators like Eryops were always on the hunt. For a creature like Eryops, the challenges of the Permian swamps weren't just about survival, they were about dominance. In these ancient wetlands, size mattered, and Eryops was a giant in its time. Eryops may not have been the swiftest or most graceful of Permian creatures, but its powerful and adaptability allowed it to thrive in an ever-changing world. Like many animals of its time, it was a creature caught between two worlds, land and water. Past the future, in the quiet corners of the ancient swamps, Eryops stood as a reminder that even in a world of giants, it was those who could adapt to the shifting environments that would leave their mark on the story of life. The Permian period wasn't just a time of fearsome predators. Amidst the ancient landscapes of Pangaea roamed a peaceful giant, a creature that thrived in the dry, sun-scorched plains. This was Edaphosaurus, a strange herbivore with a feature more commonly associated with predators, a sail on its back. Edaphosaurus was one of the earliest large plant eaters of the Permian, an herbivore that roamed these vast barren landscapes. Though it might resemble Dimetrodon at first glance, it lived a very different life. Its sail, while strikingly similar to its carnivorous cousin, served an entirely different purpose. Unlike Dimetrodon, Edaphosaurus was no hunter. Its sail, while still a mystery in many ways, may have been used for regulating body temperature, but like its carnivorous counterpart, but it's also possible that the sail served an other purpose: display. In a world where survival often depended on being noticed or not, the sail of Edaphosaurus may have been a signal to others, a way to attract mates or communicate within a group. For Edaphosaurus, life wasn't about dominance or stealth. It was about endurance. Surviving in the harsh Permian meant long, slow migrations in search for food, and this peaceful herbivore was well adapted for the challenge. Feeding on tough, fibrous plants, Edaphosaurus had a specialized jaw with broad, flat teeth that allowed it to chew through hard vegetation. In a world where plant life was often scarce and draw was common, being able to extract every ounce of nutrition from their food was critical. The landscape of the Permian was far from lush, yet Edaphosaurus thrived in these difficult conditions, adapting not just to the plants but to the arid environment itself. Its large body and slow metabolism allowed it to conserve energy, making it an expert in survival, where others might struggle. But even smart master of But even as a master of survival, Edaphosaurus wasn't immune to the challenges of its time. The world was changing, slowly, relentlessly. The climate was becoming more extreme and ecosystems were shifting. As Pangaea continued to stretch and crack, the once stable environments that Edaphosaurus called home became harsher and less predictable. For creatures like Edaphosaurus, survival was not about speed or strength. It was about adaptation in a world that tested the limits of life itself. This sail-backed herbivore found a way to thrive, leaving behind a legacy of resilience in the face of an unforgiving Earth. As the Permian period drew to a close, the world faced its greatest challenge in Earth's history, but amidst the chaos and destruction, one small, unassuming creature would emerge as the ultimate survivor, Lystrosaurus. Lystrosaurus was no giant. At just over a meter in length, this stocky herbivore wasn't fast or fierce, but it lacked in size and power. It made up for in endurance and adaptability. With its tusk-like teeth and beak, Lystrosaurus fed on tough fibrous plants, scraping through the dirt and roots in search of nourishment. One of the keys to Lystrosaurus' success was its ability to dig. Its tusks weren't just for feeding, they were also tools helping it burrow into the earth, escaping the scorching heat of the day and finding refuge from predators. This burrowing behavior may have been crucial in helping Lystrosaurus survive the Permian's increasingly harsh conditions. As the climate grew more unpredictable with prolonged droughts and extreme temperatures, the ability to retreat underground gave it an edge. But even Lystrosaurus couldn't escape that cataclysm that was coming. Around 252 million years ago, the Earth was plunged into a time of unimaginable devastation. Volcanic eruptions, climate change, ocean acidification triggered what is now known as the Permian extinction, the greatest mass extinction in our planet's history. Over 90% of all species on Earth would perish, from the mighty predators of the land to the smallest creatures in the seas. The world became a wasteland, and yet through it all, Lystrosaurus endured. After the dust had settled, when most life had been wiped from the face of the Earth, Lystrosaurus remained in a world ravaged by volcanic ash and desolation. It was one of the few species that survived the extinction event. But how? Some scientists believe that Lystrosaurus's burrowing habits and ability to survive in sparse vegetation helped it endure and worst of the Permian's catastrophes. Its simple, no-frills design made it adaptable to extreme environments, whether dry deserts or post-apocalyptic wastelands. Lystrosaurus wasn't just a survivor of the Permian, it became one of the dominant species in the early Triassic period, filling the void left by the extinction for millions of years. It roamed the earth, a testament to the resilience of life, even in the face of unimaginable odds. In many ways, Lystrosaurus represents the ultimate story of survival. It didn't have the speed or power of other Permian creatures, but it had something far more valuable: the ability to adapt. In the end, it wasn't the largest or strongest that survived the extinction. It was the ones who could endure, who could find a way to live in a world forever changed. On the floodplains of Pangaea, among the swamps and rivers, there lived a creature like no other, a hulking giant with a strange array of bony horns and ridges on its head. This was Estemmenosuchus, a synapsid whose name means crowned crocodile, and a herbivore that left its mark on the landscape. Estemmenosuchus was one of the largest herbivores of its time, standing as tall as a human and weighing over half a ton, but what made it truly unique were the horn-like projections on its head. structures that were unlike anything seen in the synapses before. The purpose of these strange bony growths is still debated. Some scientists believe that may have been used in combat. Perhaps males fought for dominance or mating rights, using their horns in clashes much like modern-day deer or antelope. Others speculate that the horns could have been a display, a way of communicating social status or even attracting mates. Although largely a herbivore creature with its size, strength, and those imposing horns, it would have been more than capable of defending itself, whether against rivals or potential predators. But despite its fearsome appearance, Estemmenosuchus was a peaceful giant, more concerned with feeding than fighting. Its large flat teeth were perfectly adapted to breaking down tough, fibrous plants, and it likely spent much of its day grazing along the banks of rivers and wetlands in the rich, fertile floodplains of the Permian. Lying for Estemmenosuchus was about endurance. It was a creature built for slow, steady living, a giant among herbivores in a world that was rapidly changing. But the peaceful life of Estemmenosuchus came with challenges. As the Permian period wore on, the climate became increasingly erratic, with dry seasons growing longer and food sources becoming more scarce. For an animal as large as Estemmenosuchus, finding enough to eat in this changing world wasn't easy. Despite the challenges, Estemmenosuchus adapted. Its robust body and efficient metabolism allowed it to survive in conditions that would have been fatal for others, less hardy creatures. But as the Permian came to an end, even the mighty Estemmenosuchus would face its greatest challenge, yet surviving the largest extinction event the world had ever seen. Though Estemmenosuchus may not have survived into the next era, its time on Earth remains a testament to the resilience of life in the Permian. For millions of years, it ruled the floodplains, a giant among giants in a world that was slowly unraveling. In the story of the Permian, Estemmenosuchus stands as a reminder that even in a world full of fierce competition and changing climates, it was possible to find strength in peace and in the quiet persistence of survival. In the Permian world, where danger was a constant companion, evolution favored those who could adapt or defend. Among these, Scutosaurus emerged as a striking example, a herbivore equipped for survival, not by speed or stealth, but through the strength of its natural armor. With a broad, squat body covered in thick bony plates called osteoderms, Scutosaurus was built like a living fortress. This heavy armor was more than just protection. It was a statement. Scutosaurus roamed west, semi-arid landscapes where predators like the fearsome, gonopsids, and other carnivores prowled. The plains. For creatures like Scutosaurus, running wasn't an option. Instead, it relied on its sheer bulk and plated defense to deter attackers. A predator might think twice before engaging with a creature that could cause significant damage while defending itself. The idea of nature arming the defenseless is a fascinating one. Today, we see similar adaptations in species like armadillos and turtles, animals that rely on their hardened exteriors to protect their softer, more vulnerable bodies. But unlike these modern creatures, Scutosaurus wasn't just a lone wanderer. There is evidence to suggest that it may have lived in herds or small groups. Social structure offered additional protection, strength in numbers. Together, a herd of Scutosaurus could form a near impenetrable wall of armored bodies, making it even harder for predators to isolate and target a single individual. In a world where survival often meant being stronger or faster than your enemies, Scutosaurus took a different path. Being harder to kill, this resilience reflects a broader lesson from the Permian era. Sometimes it's not the swiftest or the fiercest that survive. lives, but the most well-defended. The presence of such creatures demonstrates that nature constantly finds ways to level the playing field, ensuring that even the most vulnerable have a chance. As we move further into the Permian's rich and varied ecosystems, it becomes clear that every creature had a role to play, and Scutosaurus, with its impenetrable armor, played its part with quite strength. As the Permian period progressed, another fearsome predator began to dominate the food chain. Inostrancevia, a member of the Gorgonopsids, a group of saber-toothed hunters. Inostrancevia was a massive wolf-like creature stretching over 10 feet in length, with elongated canine teeth that earned it a fearsome reputation as one of the apex predators of its time. Inostrancevia physical appearance was striking. Its powerful jaws could open wide, showcasing saber-like teeth that could easily pierce the hides of other Permian creatures. This predator was built for speed and efficiency, with long, muscular limbs that allow it to chase down prey across the open expanses of the Permian landscape. Once it had its target in sight, few creatures could outrun it, and once it locked its jaws around its prey, escape was nearly impossible. Inostrancevia thrived in a world of competition, where only the strongest survived. Its primary prey were large herbivores such as Scutosaurus or other parapsids. To take down such large animals required not just strength but strategy. Inostrancevia may have hunted in packs much like modern-day lions or wolves, working together to exhaustively overpower their prey. This collective hunting behavior, if true, would have made it an even more terrifying force in the Permian ecosystem. Inostrancevia role in the food chain was critical. As an apex predator, it helped regulate the populations of herbivores, preventing overgrazing and maintaining the delicate balance of the Permian environment. This balance, known today as the keystone species effect, shows how top predators like Inostrancevia were not just hunters, they were architects of their ecosystems, shaping the very fabric of life around them. In modern times, we see similar roles filled by lions in the savanna, wolves in the forests, or orcas in the oceans. Top predators that, though fearsome, play an essential part in maintaining the health and balance of their habitats. But just like those predators, Inostrancevia reign was finite. Its dominance was destined to fade, as the challenges of a changing world proved too great even for the mightiest of hunters. The end of the Permian period brought with it an event of cataclysmic proportions, the Permian Triassic extinction event, known as the Great Dying. As Earth's climate shifted, ecosystems collapsed, and species like Inostrancevia, so perfectly adapted to their time, found themselves unable to survive. Despite their strength, speed, and dominance, the top predators of the Permian were swept away, their time at the top cut, shot by the very forces of nature they had once mastered. This shift is a poignant reminder that no matter how dominant a species may be, nature is unpredictable. Even the strongest creatures like Inostrancevia can fall victim to forces beyond their control. Climate change, shifting ecosystems, and natural disasters. Inostrancevia's fate is a powerful metaphor for the fragility of life, a reflection of how even the most powerful forces in nature can be brought low by circumstances they cannot control. As we look back at Inostrancevia, we don't see a terrifying predator. We see a symbol of both strength and fragility, a creature that reigned supreme, only to vanish when the world it knew disappeared. Its story is a stark reminder of the constant, relentless march of evolution and the impermanence of even the mightiest of creatures. In the later stages of the Permian period, the landscape was dominated by creatures that were not only fierce predators, but also massive herbivores. Among the most unique of these plant eaters was Moschops, a bizarre barrel-bodied pterapsid that lumbered across the ancient plains. With its short squat limbs and thick muscular body, Moschops might not seem like the most graceful of creatures, but it was perfectly adapted to the harsh Permian environment. What immediately stood about the Moschops was its heavy-set appearance. Weighing up to half a ton, it had a body built for endurance rather than speed, with powerful legs to carry its large frame across the rugged terrain. Its skull was uniquely structured, thick and solid, perfect for protecting its brain from injury. This skull shape has led to speculation that Moschops may have engaged in headbutting behavior, much like modern-day rams or muskilxen. Such behavior could have been used to establish dominance within a group to compete for mates, adding an interesting social layer to Moschops' otherwise lumbering lifestyle. While Moschops wasn't built for defense like Scutosaurus or armed with horns like Estemmenosuchus, it survived through sheer size and bulk. Few predators would have risked taking on such a large and potentially dangerous animal. In fact, Moschops' thick fleshy body made it difficult for even the strongest predators to get a good hold, giving it a chance to escape or fend off attackers. Moschops spent its days slowly grazing on the tough, dry vegetation that dotted the Permian landscape. This was no lush, fertile land. The Permian was dominated by harsh conditions, with droughts and extreme temperatures shaping the lives of every creature. Moschops, however, was built to thrive here. Its large barrel-shaped body may have helped store water or energy for long periods when food was scarce, a clever adaptation to the unpredictable Permian climate. But Moschops was more than just a slow-moving giant. Its presence in the ecosystem had significant effects on the environment. By feeding on tough, fibrous plants, Moschops helped maintain the balance of the local flora, preventing any one species from overgrowing and dominating the landscape. This role is comparable to that of modern-day elephants, whose feeding habits helped shape the savannas of Africa. In this sense, Moschops wasn't surviving, it was playing a crucial part in maintaining the ecosystem around it. The image of Moschops lumbering across the dry plains, its thick skull gleaming with the sun, is a reminder that size is everything in evolution. It's adaptation. Moschops may not have been fast or fearsome, but it thrived in its environment through sheer resilience. This is a theme that echoes throughout the history of life on Earth. Sometimes the survivors aren't the strongest or the most aggressive, but the ones who can best adapt to the world around them. Moving on from the massive bulk of Moschops, we encounter another fascinating herbivore of the Permian period. Cotylorhynchus, a creature that looked like it was part reptile, part balloon. This bizarre animal had one of the most unusual body shapes of its time, with an enormous barrel-like torso that seemed almost out of proportion, with its small head and long tail. Cotylorhynchus, with its massive ribcage, awkward at first glance, but like so many creatures of the Permian, its odd anatomy held the key to its survival. At over 10 feet long, Cotylorhynchus was another of the period's massive herbivores. Its most striking feature was its balloon-like body, which has wide, rounded ribcage, housed a vast digestive system necessary for processing the tough fibrous plants that made up its diet. In the dry, arid environment of the Permian, food wasn't abundant or easy to digest, so Cotylorhynchus had evolved to eat as much as possible and break it down slowly, storing energy to survive in an environment that could be harsh and unforgiving. Much like Moschops, Cotylorhynchus was not a fast-moving creature. With its short, stubby legs, it lumbered slowly across the Permian landscape, likely spending most of its time foraging for food. Its small head relative to the size of its body hints that Cotylorhynchus didn't need to hunt or defend itself aggressively. Its size and tough hide would have been enough to deter most predators. It's an image that's both amusing and intriguing. A massive, slow-moving herbivore built more for instant speed, wandering through a world full of predators and other dangers, but Cotylorhynchus' size wasn't about surviving in the wild. It was about thriving in an environment of scarcity. In a world where food was often hard to come by, Cotylorhynchus' large body and slow metabolism allowed it to survive on relatively little. Its ability to store energy like a modern-day camel would have given it a crucial advantage during long periods of drought or famine. A common occurrence in the Permian, this creature's unique adaptations remind us of the incredible diversity of life during the Permian period and how evolution sculpted each creature to fit the challenges of its environment. Cotylorhynchus wasn't just a walking stomach, it was a symbol of endurance, an animal that adapted not through speed or strength but through sheer resilience and resourcefulness. Cotylorhynchus' strange ballooned form may seem comical to us now, but in the harsh, unpredictable world of the Permian, this body was a survival machine, perfectly tuned to its environment. It's another testament to how life in all its bizarre forms finds a way to thrive, even in the toughest of conditions. Now, as we venture deeper into the Permian period, the landscapes becomes more perilous. Here in the vast expanses of dry plains and dense forests, a terrifying predator reigns supreme: Anteosaurus. One of the largest carnivorous parapsids of its time. Imagine coming face to face with this giant, an apex predator that embodied the harsh and unforgiving nature of the Permian. Standing at over 15 feet long and weighing nearly a ton, Anteosaurus was built for sheer power. Its skull alone could measure over a meter in length, equipped with massive blade-like teeth capable of tearing through flesh and bone. Unlike modern carnivores, Anteosaurus didn't rely on speed. Instead, it depended on brute strength, its heavily built body allowing it to ambush and overpower even the largest herbivores. This creature's size and strength made it a formidable predator roaming the Permian wilderness. With little fear of competition, despite its monstrous appearance, the skull structure of Anteosaurus suggests it was more sophisticated than it looked. It had a highly developed brain case, meaning it likely possessed superior senses compared to other predators of its time. This combination of raw power and enhanced sensory capabilities made it one of the most successful carnivores of the Permian period. When Anteosaurus attacked, it did so with precision and force, reminder of how evolution balances intelligence and strength to ensure survival. But the story of Anteosaurus is more than just one of the domination. It's also a tale of fierce competition. The Permian was an age of great predators, each vying for control of the food chain. Anteosaurus had to contend with other therapsid predators like Nopsids, creatures just as capable of hunting the large herbivores that roamed the land. In this world, survival wasn't guaranteed, even for the top predators. Here, we can draw parallels with modern-day ecosystems. Lions, tigers, and other apex predators face similar challenges today, competing for prey in shrinking habitats. Like them, Anteosaurus had to adapt to the ever-changing environment of the Permian's scarcity of food, fluctuating climates, and the constant threat of rival predators. The struggle for dominance in nature is a timeless theme, one that Anteosaurus epitomized through its strength and resilience. But despite its might, Anteosaurus was no match for the larger forces of nature. As the Permian period wore on, the environment became harsher, the competition fiercer, food sources dwindled, and the once thriving populations of massive herbivores began to decline. In time, Anteosaurus, like so many creatures before it, would fall victim to these changing conditions, a reminder that even the most powerful predators are not invincible. Anteosaurus, with its massive frame and brutal hunting style, leaves behind a legacy of power and dominance, yet its ultimate demise reflects the fragile balance of life, a balance that will soon be disrupted by the largest extinction event the Earth had ever seen. In stark contrast to the dry plains and forests where Anteosaurus reigned, the Permian period was also home to lush, swampy environments teeming with life, and in these dark murky waters, a giant of a different kind thrived, the massive amphibian Prionosuchus. Creature, one of the largest amphibians ever, discovered was a master of the wetlands, measuring over 30 feet in length. If you were to step into one of these ancient swamps, the first thing you'd notice would be the stillness of the water, disturbed only by the slow deliberate movement of this giant predator. Resembling a modern-day crocodile, Prionosuchus had a long, streamlined body, perfectly adapted for life in the water. Its elongated jaws were filled with sharp teeth, ready to snap down on fish, smaller amphibians, or any other creature it ventured too close. Ambush hunting was its strategy, lying just beneath the water's surface, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This style of hunting allowed Prionosuchus to conserve energy, relying on stealth and patience rather than speed or brute force. But Prionosuchus wasn't just a predator; it was a symbol of the rich hidden ecosystem that thrived in the wetlands or the Permian. While much of the period's landscape was dominated by deserts and dry climates, the wetlands were a sanctuary for creatures that needed water to survive. Here, amphibians like Prionosuchus could flourish, evolving to take full advantage of their environment. The Permian swamps would have been a lush, vibrant world filled with plant life, teeming with aquatic creatures. Fish and smaller amphibians provided a steady food source for Prionosuchus, allowing it to grow to its enormous size. But life in the wetlands wasn't about danger. Other predators lurked in these waters, and competition for sources was fierce. Prionosuchus, with its massive jaws and powerful limbs, was well equipped to defend its territory and secure its place at the top of the food chain. However, the giant amphibian's world was fragile. Swamps and wetlands, apparently vulnerable ecosystems, reliant on stable water levels and consistent climate conditions. As the Permian period progressed, shifts in the climate and geography began to threaten these environments. Droughts became more frequent, and the once thriving wetlands started to dry up. For creatures like Prionosuchus, which depended on water for survival, this spelled disaster. A downfall for Prionosuchus serves as a poignant reminder of how fragile ecosystems can be. Amphibians, in particular, are often the first to suffer when environmental conditions change, as they rely both on land and water to survive. Even today, many amphibian species are endangered due to habitat loss and climate change, echoing the fate of their ancient ancestor, Prionosuchus. As the wetlands of the Permian dried up, Prionosuchus and many of the creatures that called it home would disappear, their ecosystems lost forever to the shifting climate. The story of Prionosuchus is not just one of dominance, also one of vulnerability, a reminder that even the most powerful creatures can fall victim to the larger forces of nature. As we near the end of the Permian period, a monumental event looms on the horizon, one that will reshape life on Earth forever. It is known as the Permian Triassic extinction, or more dramatically, Big Great Time. This was the most devastating mass extinction event in Earth's history, wiping out over 90% of all species. For the plants and animals that had adapted so magnificently to the Permian world, this was an unfathomable cataclysm, one that changed everything. But what could possibly cause such a widespread collapse of life? The answer lies in a combination of catastrophic forces. Scientists have long debated the exact cause of the Great Dying, but one of the leading theories points to the Siberian Traps, a region of immense volcanic activity that erupted towards the end of the Permian. These volcanic eruptions were unlike anything we've seen in modern times. They spewed out lava flows covering millions of square kilometers and released massive amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. This led to a chain reaction of environmental disasters. As carbon dioxide levels skyrocketed, global temperatures soared, causing severe global warming. Oceans, once teeming with life, began to heat up, their delicate ecosystems collapsing. The warming also slowed down ocean currents, which in turn reduced oxygen levels in the water. Entire marine ecosystems suffocated as oxygen depleted stagnant waters spread across the planet. On land, the effects were equally destructive. Rising temperatures and prolonged droughts devastated plant life, leaving once lush landscapes barren. Forests weathered, and without plants to support the herbivores, food chains began to unravel. Even the most resilient creatures struggled to survive. Another contributing factor might have been the release of methane from beneath the ocean floor. As temperatures rose, methane hydrates trapped in the seabed could have been released into the atmosphere, further accelerating global warming in a runaway greenhouse effect. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, far more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide, and its sudden release would have pushed Earth's climate to a breaking point. As the land and seas became increasingly inhospitable, ecosystems collapsed. Marine species which had dominated the seas for millions of years were hit the hardest. Over 96% of marine life disappeared. Ancient coral reefs, intricate webs of fish and marine predators obliterated. On land, 70% of vertebrate species vanished. Iconic creatures like Dimetrodon, Moschops, and Anteosaurus, which had thrived in the Permian world, were unable to adapt quickly enough to the extreme changes. Entire ecosystems that had existed for millions of years fell apart in just a few thousand. The emotional weight of this event is almost unimaginable. Imagine a world that once thrived with life reduced to a near sterile landscape. Species that had adapted to life in one of the harshest periods in Earth's history were no match for the extreme forces unleashed at the end of the Permian. The Great Dying was more than just an extinction. It was a complete ecological collapse. But amidst all this devastation, there were survivors. While 90% of life perished, a few hardy species endured. Certain small reptiles, ancestors of the dinosaurs and mammals, managed to survive in small numbers. Some amphibians clung to life in shrinking pockets of moisture. Their resilience, while remarkable, speaks to the tenacity of life itself. The Permian, though tragic, also paved the way for new beginnings. The survivors of the Great Dying would give rise to a new era, the Triassic, the dawn of the dinosaurs, and the evolutionary path that would eventually lead to mammals and millions of years later, us. Hit that subscribe button now. To uncover the only time in history when water was safer than land, press on the video now popping on your screen. Where the dangers lurking on solid ground were far deadlier than anything beneath the waves. I'm sure you will love it. Don't forget to leave a like on this video, and see you there.